The preacher's hands trembled as he opened his Bible, and Zara Pemberton knew every person crammed into that small wooden church could see her shaking just as visibly as she stood before Logan Crawford, the man whose very name made grown men step off the boardwalk when he approached. The California sun beat down mercilessly on San Pedro that August morning in 1878, filtering through the dusty windows and casting harsh shadows across Logan's scarred face, making the jagged line that ran from his left temple to his jaw look even more menacing than usual. She had known him only 3 weeks, had spoken to him perhaps a dozen times, and now she wore a borrowed white dress that hung too loose on her thin frame while promising to honor and obey him until death parted them. Her father had died 6 months earlier, crushed beneath a wagon wheel when his team of horses spooked during a thunderstorm, leaving Zara alone with debts that mounted like winter snow in the mountains. Her mother had passed during childbirth when Zara was only 7, taking the infant brother who might have grown up to help shoulder the burden of their small ranch. At 21 years old, Zara had discovered that a woman alone in San Pedro had precious few options, especially when the bank threatened foreclosure and the other ranchers eyed her land with barely concealed hunger. Then Logan Crawford had appeared at her door one evening, hat in his massive hands, and made an offer that was more business transaction than romantic proposal. "Miss Pemberton," he had said in that low, gravelly voice that sounded like rocks grinding together, "I need a wife. You need protection and someone to settle your debts. I am proposing a practical arrangement." She had heard the stories about Logan Crawford since she was a girl, how he had killed 7 men in a gunfight in Tombstone before drifting west to California, how he never smiled, never laughed, never showed mercy to anyone who crossed him, how he had beaten a man half to death with his bare hands for cheating at cards, breaking both the man's arms so badly they never healed right. The ranch hands who worked for him spoke in hushed voices about his terrible temper, the way his pale blue eyes could go cold as a January frost, freezing a man's blood in his veins. Yet standing before him now as the preacher droned through the wedding ceremony, Zara found herself studying those eyes more closely than she ever had before. They were not looking at the preacher or the small crowd of witnesses who had come more out of morbid curiosity than genuine well-wishes. Logan's gaze rested on her face with an intensity that made her breath catch, but there was something in that look she had not expected to find. Not cruelty or coldness, but something almost like uncertainty, as if he too wondered what madness had brought them to this moment. "Do you, Logan Michael Crawford, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" the preacher asked, his voice quavering slightly. "I do," Logan said, and his deep voice filled the church with absolute certainty. When it came her turn, Zara's voice emerged as barely a whisper, but she managed the words. Logan produced a simple gold band that had belonged to his mother, he told her later, and slid it onto her finger with surprising gentleness for such large, calloused hands. Then the preacher pronounced them man and wife, and Logan bent to kiss her with lips that were warm and soft against her own trembling mouth, lasting only a moment before he pulled back and offered her his arm. The Crawford Ranch sat 5 miles outside San Pedro, a sprawling property of nearly 2,000 acres that stretched from the coastal hills down toward the valley, where cattle grazed on golden grass that rippled like ocean waves in the constant breeze. The ranch house itself was a solid 2-story structure built from timber and stone, far grander than the small cottage where Zara had grown up. Logan helped her down from the wagon he had driven them home in, his hands spanning her waist easily, and she felt the strength in them as he lifted her as though she weighed nothing at all. "I will show you the house," he said, releasing her the moment her feet touched the ground, as if touching her longer than necessary might burn him. Inside, the house was surprisingly clean and well kept, though it had the sparse, utilitarian feel of a place where only men had lived. The furniture was heavy and functional, the floors swept, but lacking the rugs and small touches that made a house feel like a home. Logan showed her through the rooms with few words, pointing out the kitchen, the parlor, his study where she should not disturb him when the door was closed, and finally the bedroom upstairs that would be theirs. Zara's heart hammered in her chest as she stood in the doorway of that room, seeing the large bed that dominated the space. She was not entirely ignorant of what happened between husbands and wives, though her knowledge came more from whispered conversations with other girls and the behavior of animals on the ranch than any explicit instruction. Logan stood behind her, so close she could feel the heat radiating from his body, and she steeled herself for what she assumed would come next. "You must be tired from the day," Logan said quietly. "I have business to attend to with my foreman. I will sleep in the spare room tonight." Before she could respond, he turned and walked away, his boots heavy on the wooden stairs. Zara stood alone in the bedroom, more confused than relieved, wondering what kind of man married a woman and then left her untouched on their wedding night. The first weeks of marriage passed in a strange dance of proximity and distance. Logan rose before dawn each day and was often gone until after dark, working his ranch with the same intensity he seemed to bring to everything he did. Zara spent her days learning the routines of the household, cooking meals that Logan ate in near silence, and trying to make sense of the man she had married. He was not cruel to her. In fact, he was unfailingly polite, always thanking her for meals, asking if she needed anything from town, ensuring she had money for household expenses. But he remained as distant as a stranger, speaking only when necessary, never touching her beyond the occasional brush of hands when passing something at the table. He continued to sleep in the spare room, and Zara began to wonder if he found her lacking in some fundamental way. The ranch hands treated her with cautious respect that bordered on fear, as if she were made of spun glass that might shatter at any moment. She learned their names gradually. Miguel, the foreman who had worked for Logan for 5 years. Johnny, a young cowhand barely 18 with a quick smile that disappeared whenever Logan appeared. Old Pete, who managed the horses and rarely spoke to anyone, and half a dozen others who came and went with the seasons. It was Miguel who first gave her a glimpse into the man Logan had been before San Pedro. She had brought lunch out to the men working on repairing fence lines one afternoon, and Miguel had stayed behind after the others returned to work. "Mrs. Crawford," he said carefully, "I wanted to tell you something about your husband." Zara waited, her hands clutching the empty basket. "Mr. Crawford, he has a fierce reputation, and some of it is earned. I will not lie to you about that. But the man I have worked for these 5 years, he is not the devil people make him out to be. He is hard but fair. He pays us better than any other ranch in California, and when my daughter was sick 2 winters ago, he paid for the doctor himself and never asked me to repay him." "Why does everyone fear him so much?" Zara asked. Miguel looked toward the hills where Logan rode his black stallion, checking on the herds. "Because fear keeps people at a distance, and I think that is how Mr. Crawford prefers it. A man who expects nothing from others cannot be disappointed." That night, Zara decided to break through some of the walls between them. She prepared Logan's favorite meal, a beef stew her father had taught her to make, rich with vegetables from the garden she had begun tending. When Logan came in from his work, she had the table set with candles and had even put on the better dress she owned, a deep blue cotton that brought out the color of her eyes. Logan stopped in the doorway, taking in the scene with an expression she could not read. For a long moment he said nothing, and Zara felt her courage begin to falter. "This looks very nice," he finally said, removing his hat and hanging it on the peg by the door. "Thank you, Zara." It was the first time he had used her given name since the wedding, and the sound of it in his deep voice sent an unexpected warmth through her chest. They sat down to eat, and Zara gathered her courage. "Logan, I was wondering if you might tell me about the ranch. I would like to understand the business better, to be more helpful to you." He looked up from his plate, surprise flickering across his scarred features. "Most women have no interest in ranch business." "I grew up on a ranch," Zara reminded him gently. "It was much smaller than this, but my father taught me to keep books and understand livestock. I am not asking to interfere, only to learn." Logan studied her for a long moment, those pale blue eyes seeming to look straight through to her soul. Then, slowly, he began to talk. He told her about the challenges of raising cattle in the California climate, about the markets in Los Angeles where he sold his herds, about his plans to expand into horse breeding. As he spoke, his voice lost some of its harsh edge, warming with passion for the work he had built from nothing. "I came to California 8 years ago with almost nothing," he said, and Zara heard the weight of history in those words. "I had money from poker games and some work I did that I am not proud of, but I wanted to build something, to prove I could be more than what people said I was." "What did people say you were?" Zara asked softly. Logan's jaw tightened and the shutters came down over his eyes again. "Nothing worth repeating. Would you like more stew?" The subject was closed, but Zara felt they had made progress nonetheless. Over the following weeks, she began to see more glimpses of the man beneath the fearsome reputation. The way he was patient with the ranch dogs, speaking to them in a gentle tone he never used with people. How he noticed when one of the hands was struggling and quietly adjusted work assignments to help without making the man feel weak. The care he took with his horses, spending hours working with them not through force but through calm persistence. One evening in late September, Zara was in the kitchen when she heard angry voices from the yard. She looked out the window to see Logan facing down 3 men on horseback, men she recognized as hands from the neighboring ranch owned by Samuel Burton. Burton had been one of the men eyeing her land before she married Logan, and she knew there was bad blood between the 2 ranchers over water rights and boundary disputes. "You have got no right to fence off that creek, Crawford," one of the men was shouting. "Mr. Burton says that water has been shared for 20 years. The creek runs through my land according to the survey," Logan said, his voice deadly calm. "Burton can dig his own wells or pipe water from the river like everyone else." "Maybe you need a lesson in being neighborly," another man said, his hand dropping toward the gun at his hip. Zara's blood turned to ice as she watched Logan's entire body shift into something predatory and dangerous. His hand did not move toward his own gun, but he somehow seemed to grow larger, more menacing, filling the space with barely contained violence. "You draw that weapon, and you will not live to see morning," Logan said quietly, but his voice carried clearly through the evening air. "Go back to Burton and tell him if he has business with me, he can come himself instead of sending boys to do a man's work." The 3 men exchanged glances, and whatever they saw in Logan's face made them turn their horses and ride away without another word. Zara watched Logan stand there for a long moment after they left, his shoulders tight with tension, before he finally turned toward the house. She was waiting in the parlor when he came inside, and she saw surprise flicker across his face when he found her there. "You heard that," he said, not a question. "I did. Logan, will there be trouble?" He sank into the chair across from her, suddenly looking tired in a way she had never seen before. Probably. Burton has been pushing for a fight for 2 years now. He wants my land, thinks he can pressure me into selling. What will you do? What I always do. Stand my ground and dare him to make the first real move. Logan rubbed his hand over his face, and Zara noticed the scars on his knuckles, the evidence of old fights. I am sorry you married into this, Zara. I should have warned you that my life is not peaceful. My life was not exactly peaceful when you found me, Zara said quietly. I would have lost everything within another month. You saved me from that, Logan. Whatever troubles come, we face them together now. That is what marriage means, is it not? Logan looked at her with an expression of such raw vulnerability that it stole her breath. I am not good at being part of a we, he said. I have been alone for so long. I do not know how to be anything else. Zara rose from her chair and crossed to kneel beside his, placing her hand over his scarred knuckles. Then we will learn together. You are not alone anymore, Logan Crawford. Neither of us is. His large hand turned under hers, palm up, and his fingers curled around hers with a gentleness that contradicted everything she had heard about him. They sat that way for a long time, hands joined in the lamplight, and Zara felt something shift between them, some wall beginning to crack. That night, Logan knocked softly on the bedroom door before entering. Zara was sitting at the small vanity, brushing out her long dark hair, and she met his eyes in the mirror. I thought I might sleep here tonight, he said, his voice rough with uncertainty. If that would be acceptable to you. Zara's heart began to race, but she nodded. This is your room as much as mine, Logan. You have always been welcome here. He changed into his nightshirt while she climbed into bed, and when he slid in beside her, the mattress dipped under his weight. For several minutes they lay there in the darkness, not touching, barely breathing. Then Logan spoke into the quiet. I need to tell you something about my past. You deserve to know the truth about the man you married. Zara turned on her side to face him, though she could barely make out his features in the darkness. You do not have to tell me anything you are not ready to share. No, I do. Because if you hear it from someone else, they will make it worse than it was, and I would rather you hear the truth from me. Logan took a deep breath. The things they say about me, about the men I have killed, most of that is true. I grew up hard in Missouri, and when the war came, I fought for the Confederacy. I was only 15 when I enlisted, lying about my age. By the time I was 17, I had killed more men than I can remember, though I try to forget. Zara listened in silence as Logan's story poured out of him in the darkness, as if the absence of light made confession easier. After the war ended, I could not go home. My parents were dead, our farm burned, and I had nothing but a gun and a talent for violence. I drifted west, hiring myself out to anyone who would pay. I worked as a guard for wagon trains, as hired muscle for ranchers in land disputes, and yes, I killed men for money. I am not proud of it, but I will not lie to you about it either. What changed? Zara asked softly. I got tired, Logan said simply. Tired of the killing, tired of being feared, tired of going to sleep wondering if someone would shoot me in my bed before morning. I decided I wanted something different, something real and lasting. So I came to California and used the only skills I had to build this ranch. I hired men and paid them fairly and worked harder than any of them, and I tried to become someone different from the man I had been. Have you succeeded? Zara asked. Logan was quiet for a long moment. I do not know. The violence is still inside me. I can feel it sometimes, like a beast waiting to be unleashed. What happened today in the yard, that came so easily to me, too easily. I scare myself sometimes with how quickly I can go to that dark place. Zara reached out in the darkness and found his hand. You did not hurt those men today. You could have, but you chose not to. That has to count for something. What if one day I make the wrong choice? What if I become the monster everyone already thinks I am? Then I will be there to remind you that you are more than your worst moments, Zara said. Everyone has darkness in them, Logan. What matters is what we choose to do with it. She felt him turn toward her, and then his hand came up to cup her cheek with surprising tenderness. How did you get to be so wise? I am not wise. I am just a woman who has seen enough of the world to know that people are rarely as simple as their reputations suggest. Zara leaned into his touch, her heart thundering in her chest. Logan, why did you really marry me? The truth. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, and she felt him trembling. Because I saw you at church one Sunday, and you were singing a hymn with your eyes closed, and you looked so peaceful and beautiful that I could not breathe. I made excuses to ride past your ranch for weeks after that, just hoping to catch a glimpse of you. When I heard about your father's death and your troubles with the bank, I knew it was wrong to take advantage of your situation, but I could not stop myself. I told myself I was offering a practical solution, but the truth is I wanted you for myself. I am selfish enough and ruthless enough to use your misfortune as an opportunity. Zara felt tears sting her eyes, but they were not tears of sadness. I thought you married me out of pity or convenience. I thought you found me lacking somehow, that is why you stayed away. Lacking? Logan's voice filled with disbelief. Zara, I stayed away because I am terrified of you. You make me feel things I have not felt in years, things I did not think I was capable of feeling. I did not know how to approach you, how to be a proper husband to someone as good and kind as you are. Then let us figure it out together, Zara whispered, and she closed the distance between them, pressing her lips to his. Logan made a sound low in his throat and pulled her closer, his kiss deepening with a hunger that had been held in check for too long. Zara went willingly into his arms, feeling the solid strength of him, the warmth of his body against hers. His hands tangled in her hair, and hers explored the broad expanse of his shoulders, and when he pulled back to look at her with eyes full of wonder and desire, she smiled. I am your wife, Logan, truly your wife. You do not have to be afraid of me. I am not afraid of you, he said, his voice rough. I am afraid of how much I already need you. They came together that night with a tenderness that surprised them both, learning each other's bodies and hearts in the quiet darkness. Logan was gentle with her, patient and careful, and when Zara cried out softly against his shoulder, it was with pleasure and the overwhelming realization that she had begun to love this complicated, scarred man who held her like she was something precious. Afterwards, they lay tangled together, Logan's fingers tracing idle patterns on her bare shoulder while she listened to the steady beat of his heart. Zara, he murmured into her hair, I want you to know that I will do everything in my power to be worthy of you. I cannot promise I will always succeed, but I swear I will try. That is all anyone can do, she said, pressing a kiss to his chest. Try and keep trying and forgive ourselves when we fall short. The weeks that followed brought a transformation to the Crawford ranch that did not go unnoticed by the hands who worked there. Logan smiled more, laughed occasionally at something Zara said, and seemed lighter somehow, as if a weight he had carried for years had finally been lifted. He began coming in for lunch instead of staying out all day, stealing kisses from his wife in the kitchen when he thought no one was looking. Zara bloomed under the attention, her cheeks gaining color, her eyes bright with happiness. They fell into routines that felt like a real marriage. Zara would wake to find Logan already dressed, but he would come back to kiss her goodbye before heading out for the day. She would spend her mornings tending to the house and garden, then ride out in the afternoons to bring lunch to Logan and learn more about the ranch operations. He taught her to read brands and assess cattle condition, explaining the business decisions he made and why. In the evenings, they would sit together in the parlor, Zara reading aloud while Logan worked on repairing tack or going over his books. But the peaceful bubble they had built around themselves could not last forever. In mid-October, Samuel Burton made his move. Zara was in town buying supplies when she heard the commotion near the bank. A crowd had gathered, and she pushed through to see Logan facing down Burton, a portly man in his 50s with cold eyes and a mean mouth. "I am telling you for the last time, Crawford, that land has been in my family for generations, and I will not have some upstart claiming what is mine." Burton was shouting, his face red with rage. "The survey does not lie," Logan said with that terrible calm that Zara had learned meant he was at his most dangerous. "The creek runs through my property. You have been stealing my water for years, and it stops now. You think you can come to San Pedro and take whatever you want. You think your reputation scares me." Burton stepped closer, poking his finger into Logan's chest. "I have dealt with men 10 times more dangerous than you, and I am not backing down from some washed-up gunfighter who thinks he can play at being a rancher." Zara saw Logan's hands curl into fists, saw the muscle jump in his jaw, and she knew he was seconds away from violence. She pushed forward without thinking, placing herself between the two men. "Mr. Burton," she said, keeping her voice level though her heart hammered in her chest. "This dispute can be settled in court if necessary. There is no need for it to come to blows in the middle of town." Burton's eyes raked over her with contempt. The little wife trying to keep her mongrel on a leash. "Tell me, does he heel when you command, or does he need a firmer hand?" Logan moved faster than Zara would have thought possible for a man his size. One moment Burton was sneering at them, the next Logan had him by the throat, slamming him back against the wall of the bank with enough force to rattle the windows. "You will apologize to my wife," Logan said, his voice barely above a whisper but carrying clearly in the sudden silence. "Now." Burton's face was turning purple, his hands scrabbling uselessly at Logan's iron grip. The crowd backed away, and Zara saw several men reach for guns, though whether to defend Burton or stop Logan she could not tell. "Logan," Zara said quietly, placing her hand on his arm. "Let him go. He is not worth it." For a terrible moment she thought Logan would not listen, that the beast he had spoken of would win. But then she felt the tension drain from his muscles, and he released Burton, who collapsed against the wall, gasping for air. "If you ever speak to or about my wife with such disrespect again, I will kill you," Logan said flatly. "That is not a threat, Burton. It is a promise." He turned and took Zara's arm, leading her away from the crowd. She could feel him shaking, and she knew it was not from fear but from the effort of controlling himself. "I am sorry," Logan said once they were alone in the alley beside the general store. "I should not have lost control like that. I just heard him insult you, and something inside me snapped." "You stopped," Zara said, cupping his face in her hands and making him look at her. "That is what matters. You were angry enough to kill him, I could see it, but you chose to stop. Logan, that is not weakness. That is strength." Logan pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "I was so angry. I am still angry. He has no right to speak to you that way, to look at you that way." "No, he does not," Zara agreed. "But you defended my honor without giving him the satisfaction of dragging you down to his level. You showed everyone in that crowd that Logan Crawford can control his temper when it matters." They stood there for several minutes, Logan breathing deeply while Zara ran her hands soothingly over his back. Finally, he pulled back and managed a small smile. "What would I do without you?" "Probably end up in jail for murder," Zara said, trying to lighten the mood. Good thing you married me when you did. The incident with Burton had consequences, though not the ones Zara had feared. Instead of making things worse, word spread through San Pedro about how Logan had defended his wife, but held back from real violence. Several townspeople who had previously avoided the Crawfords began to nod greeting when they passed, and the preacher's wife even invited Zara to join the church ladies' sewing circle. More importantly, the other ranchers began to take Logan more seriously as a neighbor rather than just a dangerous man to avoid. When evidence of the survey was presented to the town council, they ruled in Logan's favor regarding the water rights, and Burton was forced to back down. But Burton was not a man who accepted defeat gracefully. 2 weeks after the council's decision, Logan's herd was stampeded in the middle of the night, scattering cattle across 3 counties and trampling fences. No one could prove Burton was behind it, but Logan knew, and Zara could see the rage building in him again. "I could ride over there and settle this once and for all," Logan said, pacing the parlor like a caged animal. "Burton needs to learn there are consequences for attacking what is mine." "And then what?" Zara asked. "You kill him or beat him half to death and you end up hanging from a rope. How does that help anyone?" "It helps me sleep at night knowing that anyone who thinks they can push me around learns differently. You are not that man anymore." Zara stood, facing him down even though he towered over her. "You told me yourself you wanted to be different to be better. Well, being better means not giving into every violent impulse. You do not understand what it is like," Logan shouted, and Zara flinched despite herself. He saw her reaction and immediately stepped back, horror washing over his face. "God, Zara, I am sorry. I would never hurt you. Never." "I know," she said, though her voice shook slightly. "But Logan, I need you to hear me. If you go after Burton with violence, he wins. He makes you into exactly what everyone has always said you are. But if you find another way, a better way, you prove that you are more than your reputation." Logan sank into a chair, his head in his hands. "I do not know how to be that man. Violence is all I have ever known." Zara knelt beside him, taking his hands in hers. "Then learn. We will figure it out together. Talk to the sheriff about the stampede. Offer a reward for information. Use the law instead of your fists." It went against every instinct Logan had, but he did as Zara suggested. The sheriff investigated and found evidence that 2 of Burton's hands had been seen near the Crawford ranch the night of the stampede. When confronted with potential charges, one of the men admitted Burton had paid them to scatter the herd. Burton was fined heavily and ordered to pay for the damages to Logan's property. The victory felt hollow to Logan at first, but as the weeks passed and he saw how the town's opinion of him continued to improve, he began to understand what Zara had been trying to teach him. Strength was not just about who could hit harder or shoot faster. Sometimes the greatest strength came from restraint, from choosing the harder but better path. As autumn gave way to winter, Zara began to suspect she might be carrying Logan's child. Her monthly courses had stopped, and she felt tired and queasy in the mornings. She waited to be certain before telling Logan, not wanting to raise false hopes. When she finally confirmed her suspicions with the doctor in town, she planned an elaborate evening to share the news. She cooked Logan's favorite foods, wore her best dress, and waited nervously for him to come home from his work. Logan knew something was different the moment he walked through the door. Zara was practically vibrating with barely contained excitement, and he felt his heart rate pick up in response. "What has happened?" he asked, concern creeping into his voice. "Is everything all right?" "Everything is wonderful," Zara said, taking his hands and leading him to the table. "But I have something important to tell you, and I want you to sit down first." Logan sat, his mind racing through possibilities, most of them dire. When Zara knelt beside his chair and placed his hand on her still flat stomach, he looked at her in confusion. "Logan, I am carrying our child. You are going to be a father." The words did not seem to register at first. Logan stared at her, then at his hand on her stomach, then back at her face. Then slowly, wonder began to dawn in his pale blue eyes, followed by something that looked almost like fear. "A child," he whispered. "Zara, I do not know how to be a father. What if I am terrible at it? What if I hurt the baby without meaning to?" "You will not," Zara said firmly. "You are so gentle with me, so patient with the horses and the dogs. You will be a wonderful father, Logan." "What if the child fears me?" His voice broke on the words. "What if I have a son or daughter who looks at me the way everyone else in this town used to look at me, with terror in their eyes?" Zara climbed into his lap, wrapping her arms around his neck. "Our child will know you as I know you. As a man who works hard, who keeps his promises, who loves fiercely and protects what is his. They will know the man behind the quiet eyes, the one who makes me laugh and holds me when I cry and tries every day to be better than he was the day before." Logan buried his face in her neck, and she felt wetness against her skin that might have been tears. "I love you, Zara. I did not think I was capable of loving anyone, but God help me. I love you so much it terrifies me." "I love you too," Zara whispered. "I think I have been falling in love with you since you sat across from me at dinner and told me about your dreams for this ranch. Maybe even before that, when you lifted me down from the wagon on our wedding day, and your hands were so gentle." They held each other for a long time, two damaged people who had found healing in each other's arms, now facing the terrifying and wonderful prospect of bringing new life into the world. The winter passed peacefully. Logan became almost comically protective of Zara, insisting she rest more and work less, though she laughingly reminded him that women had been having babies while doing hard physical labor since the beginning of time. He would place his hand on her growing belly at night, marveling at the changes in her body. And when the baby began to move, the look of absolute wonder on his face made Zara fall in love with him all over again. Word spread through San Pedro that the Crawfords were expecting, and the change in how people treated them was remarkable. Women who had previously kept their distance now offered advice and hand-me-down baby clothes. Men congratulated Logan with genuine warmth, and even the preacher made a special visit to offer prayers for a healthy delivery. But not everyone was pleased by the news. Samuel Burton's hatred had only grown since his public defeat, and he began spreading vicious rumors about Zara, suggesting the child might not be Logan's, that she had been a woman of loose morals who had trapped Crawford into marriage. Logan heard the rumors from Miguel, who came to him looking worried and uncomfortable. "Boss, I thought you should know what Burton has been saying in town. It is ugly stuff, lies about Mrs. Crawford." Logan's face went still and dangerous. "What exactly is he saying?" Miguel repeated the rumors reluctantly, watching Logan's expression grow darker with each word. When he finished, Logan stood and reached for his gun belt. "Logan, no," Miguel said urgently. "You cannot go after him. That is exactly what he wants, to provoke you into doing something that will get you arrested or killed." "He is attacking my wife's honor," Logan said, his voice deadly calm. "I cannot let that stand." Before Miguel could respond, Zara appeared in the doorway of the study, her hand resting protectively on her swollen belly. "What is happening?" Logan tried to shield her from the truth, but she insisted on knowing, and Miguel reluctantly told her. Zara listened in silence, her face growing pale but her spine straightening with anger. "So he thinks to ruin my reputation and hurt you through me," she said quietly. "Well, he has underestimated us both." "Zara, I have to do something," Logan said. I cannot just let him spread these lies about you." "No, we cannot let him spread lies," Zara agreed. "But we will fight him my way this time, not with guns, but with truth." She went to every woman in the church sewing circle individually, calmly explaining the situation and asking for their support. She showed them the dates of her marriage and the doctor's estimate of when she had conceived, making it mathematically impossible for her to have been pregnant before she married Logan. She spoke with quiet dignity about the whisper campaign against her, and she asked each woman to examine her own conscience about whether they believed malicious gossip or the evidence of their own eyes. The women rallied around her with a fierceness that surprised even Zara. They began their own campaign, speaking truth wherever Burton's lies had spread, defending Zara's character and making it clear that anyone who repeated such vicious gossip would answer to them. Within a week, Burton found himself ostracized from polite society, his lies exposed and his character questioned. When Burton tried to show his face at church the following Sunday, the preacher's wife loudly asked him if he had come to beg forgiveness for bearing false witness against his neighbor. Burton left in humiliation, and he never spoke publicly against the Crawfords again. Logan watched his wife handle the situation with awe and respect. "You are incredible," he told her that night as they lay in bed. "You fought that battle without firing a single shot, and you won more decisively than I could have with a dozen guns." "Violence is not always the answer," Zara said, though she smiled at his praise. "Sometimes the strongest weapon is truth spoken with courage." In early May of 1879, as wildflowers bloomed across the California hills, Zara went into labor. Logan paced the downstairs parlor like a caged animal, while the doctor and several women from town attended to Zara upstairs. Every cry of pain that filtered down made Logan flinch as if he had been struck, and Miguel finally convinced him to step outside before he wore a hole in the floor. "This is torture," Logan said, running his hands through his hair. "Listening to her in pain and being unable to do anything to help." "Welcome to fatherhood," Miguel said with a knowing smile. "My wife says the waiting is worse for the men than the labor is for the women, though I do not believe that for a second." The sun was setting when the doctor finally emerged, tired but smiling. "Mr. Crawford, you have a healthy son. Your wife did beautifully. You can go up and see them now." Logan took the stairs 3 at a time, bursting into the bedroom to find Zara propped against pillows, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. She looked up at him with tears of joy streaming down her face. "Come meet your son," she said softly. Logan approached the bed as if walking on sacred ground. He looked down at the infant in Zara's arms, at the small red face and the tiny fists waving in the air, and felt something in his chest crack wide open. "He is perfect," Logan whispered, his voice rough with emotion. "Zara, he is absolutely perfect. Would you like to hold him?" she asked. Logan's hands trembled as he carefully took the baby from her, cradling the infant against his chest with a gentleness that belied his size and strength. The baby's eyes opened, unfocused but searching, and Logan felt his heart expand in a way he had never experienced before. "What should we name him?" Zara asked. They had discussed names for months, unable to agree on anything that felt right. But looking down at his son, Logan suddenly knew. "Matthew," he said. "Matthew James Crawford, if that suits you." Zara smiled through her tears. "It suits me perfectly. Welcome to the world, Matthew James." The weeks after Matthew's birth brought a transformation to Logan that Zara had never imagined possible. The fierce cowboy everyone feared became a devoted father who could be found at all hours walking the floor with a crying infant, singing rough lullabies in his deep voice. or simply staring at his son with an expression of absolute wonder. "I never knew I could feel like this," Logan told Zara one night as they watched Matthew sleep in his cradle. "Like my heart is walking around outside my body. It is terrifying and wonderful all at once. Now you understand why I was not afraid to stand up to Burton and his lies," Zara said. "I would do anything to protect our family, just as you would." The ranch continued to prosper under Logan's management. His reputation as a fair but demanding employer spread, and he had his pick of the best ranch hands in California. He began breeding horses as he had planned, developing a line known for intelligence and endurance that commanded premium prices. More importantly, Logan's relationship with the town of San Pedro continued to evolve. He joined the Cattlemen's Association and became known for his level-headed contributions to disputes. When a harsh winter threatened the smaller ranches, Logan was the first to offer help, lending cattle and supplies to his neighbors without demanding repayment. Slowly but surely, Logan Crawford became respected not for the violence he was capable of, but for the character he had built. Samuel Burton's fortunes went in the opposite direction. His poor treatment of his hands led to good workers leaving for better opportunities, including several who came to work for Logan. His attempts to undercut other ranchers backfired when his reputation for dishonesty became known. Within 2 years, Burton was forced to sell his ranch to pay his debts, and he left San Pedro in disgrace. Logan felt no satisfaction in Burton's downfall, only relief that the threat to his family was gone. He had learned that the best revenge was not violence but success, not destruction but building something lasting and good. As Matthew grew from infant to toddler, Zara watched her husband blossom in his role as father. Logan taught their son to ride before he could walk properly, holding the boy safely on the saddle in front of him as they toured the ranch. He was endlessly patient with Matthew's questions, explaining everything about the animals and the land in careful detail. When Matthew was 3, Zara became pregnant again, this time with a daughter they named Rebecca Grace. Logan was just as besotted with his daughter as he had been with his son, perhaps even more so. He declared that any man who wanted to court Rebecca when she grew up would have to pass his inspection first, a pronouncement that made Zara laugh and remind him that their daughter was still an infant. The years passed in a blur of happiness that neither Logan nor Zara had ever expected to find. They added rooms to the house to accommodate their growing family, and a third child, another son named Thomas, arrived when Matthew was 6. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Logan and Zara stood on the porch of their home, watching their 3 children play in the yard while the sun set over the California hills. Logan's arm was around Zara's waist, and she leaned into his solid warmth with the comfort of long familiarity. "Do you remember our wedding day?" Logan asked. "How terrified you looked standing beside me in that church." "I remember thinking I was marrying a monster," Zara admitted. "I was so frightened I could barely speak my vows. And now—" Zara turned in his arms to face him, reaching up to trace the scar on his face that she had long since stopped noticing. "Now I know the truth, that the man everyone feared had the kindest heart hidden behind those quiet eyes, that mercy and strength can exist in the same person. That love can transform even the most damaged souls if we are willing to let it." Logan kissed her softly, a kiss that still made her heart race even after 10 years of marriage. "You saved me, Zara. I was heading down a dark path, becoming the monster everyone said I was. But you showed me a different way. You taught me that I could be more than my past, more than my reputation." "We saved each other," Zara corrected. "I was drowning in debt and fear with no way out. You gave me security and protection, and then you gave me so much more. You gave me love and partnership, and a family I never dreamed I could have." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching their children. Matthew was showing his younger siblings how to catch fireflies in the gathering dusk, his patience with them a reflection of how Logan had been with him. Rebecca was laughing, her dark curls bouncing as she chased the glowing insects. Thomas, only 2 years old, toddled after his older siblings with determination. "I want to expand the horse breeding operation," Logan said eventually. "I have been corresponding with ranchers in Kentucky about improving our stock. It would mean significant investment, but I think we could become the premier horse ranch in California within 5 years." "Then we should do it," Zara said without hesitation. "I have faith in your vision, Logan. You have never steered us wrong." "I had a thought about that," Logan continued. "Matthew is getting old enough to start learning the business seriously. I want to teach him everything so that when he is grown, he can take over if he wants to. Build something that lasts beyond us, a legacy for our children and their children." Zara smiled, her heart full. "I love that idea. Teaching him not just how to run a ranch, but how to be a good man, how to treat people fairly, how to choose mercy over violence." "The way you taught me," Logan said quietly. "The way we taught each other," Zara insisted. "Logan, you had that goodness in you all along. I just helped you see it and believe in it." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, they called their children inside for dinner. The house that had once felt sparse and cold now rang with laughter and life. Around the dinner table, Matthew entertained them with stories from his adventures around the ranch, while Rebecca demanded to know when she could have her own horse, and Thomas smeared mashed potatoes across his face with gleeful abandon. Logan looked around the table at his family, at the life he had built from the ashes of his violent past, and felt gratitude so profound it was almost painful. This was everything he had never dared to hope for, everything he thought he did not deserve. Yet here it was, real and solid and his. After the children were in bed, Zara and Logan returned to the porch, as had become their custom on warm evenings. Zara settled into Logan's lap in the rocking chair he had built her, her head resting against his shoulder. "Tell me something," Zara said. "Do you ever miss it? The old life, the excitement of danger and violence?" Logan considered the question carefully. "Sometimes I remember the simplicity of it. When you solve every problem with your fists or your gun, you do not have to think too hard about consequences. But I would not trade this life for anything." "The old excitement was hollow, Zara. This, what we have built together, this is real. This matters." "I am proud of you," Zara said. "Proud of the man you have become, the father you are, the husband you are to me. I hope you know that." Logan tightened his arms around her. "I know. And I hope you know that I thank God every day for the circumstances that brought you into my life. Even if those circumstances were not ideal, even if I took advantage of your vulnerability, I cannot regret it because it gave me you." "No regrets," Zara agreed. "Only gratitude and love." They rocked together in the peaceful darkness, listening to the sounds of the ranch settling down for the night. In the distance, cattle lowed softly, and horses moved in their corrals. Closer by, a dog barked once and then fell silent. Inside the house, their children slept safely, confident in the love and protection of their parents. The next morning brought news that would test everything Logan had learned about choosing peace over violence. A rider arrived at dawn with word that a gang of rustlers had been working the area, hitting several ranches and making off with significant numbers of cattle. The ranchers were organizing a posse to track down the thieves and recover their stock. Logan listened to the report from his foreman with a carefully neutral expression, but Zara could see the old fire kindling in his eyes. This was exactly the kind of situation that would have called for the violent Logan of old, the gunfighter who would have ridden out eagerly to hunt down the criminals. "What are you thinking?" Zara asked after the foreman left. "I am thinking that I have 200 head of cattle that could be at risk," Logan said. "That these rustlers need to be stopped before someone gets killed, and I am thinking that I have skills that would be useful in tracking them down." "I see," Zara said carefully. "And are you also thinking about the promise you made to our children that you would always choose the path of peace when possible?" Logan turned to look at her, conflict clear on his face. "This is different, Zara. This is not about picking a fight or letting anger control me. This is about protecting our property and helping our neighbors." "Is it?" Zara challenged gently. "Or is part of you excited by the prospect of action, of using those old skills again?" Logan was silent for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was heavy with honesty. "Maybe. I would be lying if I said the idea did not appeal to some part of me, but that does not mean my reasons for going are not valid." "I am not saying you should not go," Zara said, moving to stand in front of him. "I am saying you need to be honest with yourself about why you are going and what you hope to accomplish. If you ride out there looking for violence, you will find it. But if you go to help recover the cattle and bring the rustlers to justice legally, that is different." "I do not know if I can promise to avoid violence," Logan admitted. "If it comes to a fight, I will defend myself and the other men. I know, and I would expect nothing less. Just promise me you will not go looking for it. That you will remember you have a family waiting for you to come home safely." Logan pulled her into his arms, resting his chin on top of her head. "I promise. I will be careful, and I will do everything I can to handle this without bloodshed." He rode out with the posse an hour later, and Zara watched him go with her heart in her throat. Matthew stood beside her, his young face troubled. "Will Papa be all right?" he asked. "Your father is very capable," Zara told him, "and he has promised to be careful. We must have faith in him." The posse tracked the rustlers for 3 days, before catching up with them in a canyon, 20 miles north of San Pedro. Logan had taken a leadership role in the tracking, his experience making him invaluable, but he had been careful to counsel patience and caution rather than rushing into confrontation. When they finally cornered the rustlers, Logan insisted on trying to talk them into surrendering before any shooting started. He rode forward alone, his hands visible and empty, and called out to the men. "You are surrounded and outnumbered," Logan said, his voice carrying clearly. "We have no desire for bloodshed. Surrender peacefully and you will get a fair trial. Force us to fight and some of you will die. The choice is yours." The rustlers conferred among themselves, and for a tense moment, Logan thought it might work. Then one of them raised a rifle and fired, the bullet passing so close to Logan's head he felt the wind of its passage. Everything happened fast after that. Logan dove from his horse as gunfire erupted from both sides. He took cover behind a boulder, his own rifle in his hands, but he did not fire immediately. Instead, he watched the rustlers' positions, looking for a way to end this without killing anyone. He saw his opportunity when 2 of the rustlers tried to flank the posse's position. Logan fired twice, not to hit them but to force them back into cover. Then he called out again. "You are only making this worse for yourselves. We can wait you out all day and all night if needed. Surrender now." The fight lasted another 10 minutes before the rustlers, realizing they truly were trapped, threw down their weapons and emerged with their hands up. Logan kept his rifle trained on them until they were all secured, but he felt a profound sense of relief that he had not had to kill anyone. The posse returned to San Pedro with the rustlers and most of the stolen cattle. Logan was hailed as a hero, but he deflected the praise, insisting he had simply done what anyone would have done. When he finally made it home, Zara was waiting on the porch. She searched his face for signs of the old Logan, the violent man who solved problems with bullets, but all she saw was her husband, tired and dirty but whole. "No one died," Logan told her as he dismounted. "We recovered the cattle and brought the rustlers back for trial. It is over." Zara threw herself into his arms, not caring that he was covered in trail dust. "I knew you would find a way. I am so proud of you, Logan." Matthew came running from the barn, followed by Rebecca and even little Thomas. They surrounded their father, and Logan knelt down to embrace all of them at once. "Did you shoot anyone, Papa?" Matthew asked with the bloodthirsty curiosity of a 6-year-old boy. "I fired my rifle, but I aimed to miss," Logan told him. "Sometimes the greatest victory is the one achieved without killing, son. Remember that." Later that night, after the children were asleep and Logan had bathed and eaten, he and Zara lay together in their bed. Logan was quiet, his mind clearly working through something. "What are you thinking about?" Zara finally asked. "I was remembering who I used to be," Logan said slowly. 10 years ago, if I had been in that canyon with those rustlers, I would have killed at least half of them. I would not have hesitated or tried to talk them down. I would have seen it as them or me and acted accordingly. But you are not that man anymore." "No, I am not. And I realized something today, out there in that canyon. I was not holding back out of fear or weakness. I genuinely did not want to kill those men if there was another option. The old me would have seen mercy as weakness. The new me understands that mercy is often the strongest choice." "You found mercy behind those quiet eyes after all," Zara said softly, echoing the thought she had had so many times over the years. Logan rolled to face her, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. "You gave me that gift, Zara. You looked at me when everyone else saw a monster, and you saw a man worth saving. You believed in me even when I did not believe in myself. Everything good in my life stems from you taking a chance on me." "We took a chance on each other," Zara reminded him. "I was just as lost as you were, just in different ways. We found each other at exactly the right time, and we built this beautiful life together." They made love that night with the tenderness and passion that comes from deep familiarity and enduring love. Afterwards, Logan held Zara close and spoke into the darkness. "I want more children," he said. "I want to fill this house with love and laughter. I want to spend the next 40 years building our legacy and growing old with you." 40 years, Zara teased. "Only 40, 50 then, 60. However long God gives us. I want every moment with you, Zara Crawford." The years continued to pass in a blur of happiness and hard work. The ranch expanded significantly, becoming one of the most successful operations in California. Logan's horse breeding program became renowned, and buyers came from as far as Kentucky and Virginia to purchase his stock. He took Matthew and eventually Rebecca and Thomas along on his business dealings, teaching them not just the mechanics of ranching but the importance of integrity and fair dealing. The children grew strong and healthy, each developing their own personalities. Matthew was steady and thoughtful like his father, taking naturally to ranch management. Rebecca inherited her father's fierce determination and her mother's compassion, always championing the underdog. Thomas was the wild card, full of laughter and mischief that kept his parents on their toes. Logan and Zara were blessed with 2 more children, twin girls named Sarah and Emma, born when Matthew was 12. Logan joked that he was completely outnumbered now, with 4 daughters and wives to his 2 sons, but his absolute devotion to his girls was clear to everyone who saw him with them. On their 20th wedding anniversary, the ranch threw a massive celebration. All their neighbors came, including many of the people who had once feared Logan Crawford. Now they knew him as a pillar of the community, a man whose word was his bond and whose generosity had helped many of them through hard times. The preacher who had married them, now much older and grayer, stood to offer a toast. 20 years ago, I married Logan Crawford and Zara Pemberton in my little church, and I confess I had my doubts about the match. I had heard the stories about Logan, and I feared for young Zara's well-being. But I have learned a powerful lesson from watching this marriage over the years. People can change, redemption is real, and love truly does have the power to transform us into better versions of ourselves. Logan stood, pulling Zara up with him, and addressed the crowd. Most of you know my reputation, know the man I was before I came to San Pedro. I will not pretend that man never existed, or that I am not responsible for the things I did. But I want you all to know that Zara saved me from that darkness. She saw something in me worth nurturing, and she had the courage to stand beside me even when she had every reason to run. Everything good in my life I owe to her faith in me. Zara wiped tears from her eyes as Logan pulled her into his arms. "I love you," she whispered. "Then, now, and always." "And I love you," Logan replied. "My wife, my partner, my salvation." Their children clustered around them, and the photographer captured the moment. The Crawford family surrounded by love and community, a testament to the power of mercy and second chances. As the celebration continued into the evening, Logan and Zara stole away for a few moments alone. They walked to the top of the hill overlooking the ranch, watching the sun set over the land they had built together. "You remember what you said to me on our wedding night?" Logan asked. "When I told you about my past, and you said everyone has darkness in them, what matters is what we choose to do with it." "I remember. I have spent 20 years trying to choose light over darkness, trying to be worthy of you and our children. There are still days when the old anger rises up, when I am tempted to solve problems with my fists. But then I think about you, about our family, about the life we have built, and the temptation passes." Zara leaned against him, feeling the solid strength that had always made her feel safe. "You are not just worthy, Logan. You are extraordinary. You took your capacity for violence and transformed it into a capacity for protection. You took your hardness and learned to temper it with kindness. You are living proof that our pasts do not have to define our futures." They stood together as the sky turned from gold to pink to deep purple, watching stars begin to appear. Below them, the ranch was lit up with lanterns, and they could hear music and laughter floating on the evening breeze. "I never imagined I could have this," Logan said quietly. "A home, a family, respect, love. I thought I was destined to die young and violent, unmourned and unmissed. Instead, I have everything a man could want." "We have everything," Zara corrected. "This is our dream, our life, built together." Logan turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "I want you to know something, Zara. If I had to do it all over again, every mistake, every wrong turn, every moment of violence and darkness, I would do it all exactly the same because it led me to you. You are worth every hard mile I traveled to get here. And you are worth every moment of fear I felt standing beside you in that church," Zara replied. "I trembled marrying the cowboy everyone feared, but I found mercy behind your quiet eyes, and that mercy has been the foundation of our love." They kissed as the last light faded from the sky, two souls who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful from the wreckage of their pasts. Around them, the ranch bustled with life and celebration, but in that moment, they were alone in their perfect happiness. The years continued their relentless march forward. Matthew grew into a man much like his father, strong and capable but with a gentleness that made him beloved by everyone who knew him. He took over more and more of the ranch operations, allowing Logan to step back slightly and spend more time with his younger children. Rebecca proved to have her father's business acumen and her mother's diplomatic skills. She became invaluable in negotiations and managing the ranch's finances. When she was 18, a young lawyer from San Francisco came to town and immediately fell for her fierce intelligence and kind heart. Logan gave his blessing for the courtship, though he grumbled about losing his daughter to city life. Thomas found his calling working with the horses, developing an almost supernatural ability to gentle even the wildest Mustang. Logan watched his youngest son with pride, seeing in him the same patient determination that had helped Logan build his reputation in horse breeding. The twins, Sarah and Emma, were inseparable and kept the household lively with their constant chatter and schemes. At 8 years old, they already showed signs of being formidable women, much to their parents' delight and occasional exasperation. One evening, when Logan was 52 and Zara was 49, they sat together on their familiar porch, watching the sun set as they had done thousands of times before. Logan's hair was now more gray than dark, and lines creased his face, but Zara thought he had never been more handsome. "I have been thinking about the future," Logan said. "Matthew is more than ready to take over full management of the ranch. I thought perhaps we might travel a bit, see some of the country we have never had time to visit." Zara's eyes lit up. "I would love that. I have always wanted to see the ocean properly, spend more than a few hours at a time by the water." "Then we will do it. We will take a month, maybe 2, and just be Logan and Zara, not the ranchers or the parents. Just us, the way we were in those early days when we were learning each other." "We are not the same people we were then," Zara pointed out. "No, we are better," Logan said with conviction. "We have been tested and tried and come through stronger. We have built a family, a legacy, a life worth living, and I want to celebrate that with the woman who made it all possible." They did take that trip, leaving the ranch in Matthew's capable hands and setting out to explore. They spent weeks traveling up the California coast, staying in small hotels and walking on beaches, talking for hours about everything and nothing. They visited San Francisco and saw Rebecca, who was thriving in her new life. They went to the mountains and watched wild horses run free. During their travels, Logan spoke more about his past than he ever had before, telling Zara stories about the war and the difficult years that followed. He talked about the guilt he still carried for lives taken and choices made. Zara listened without judgment, offering comfort and understanding. "You think God can forgive me for the things I have done?" Logan asked one night as they sat watching the ocean. "I think God already has," Zara said. "Look at the life you have lived these past 30 years. Look at the good you have done, the people you have helped, the family you have raised. That is not the life of an unforgiven man, Logan. That is redemption made manifest." When they returned to the ranch, they found everything running smoothly under Matthew's management. Their children greeted them with joy, and Logan realized that this was the true measure of his success. Not the size of his ranch or the quality of his stock, but the love of his family and the peace in his heart. As Logan approached his 60th year, he began to slow down, though he remained active in the ranch's horse breeding program. He spent more time with his grandchildren, of which there were now several, teaching them to ride and telling them stories about the old days, carefully edited to be appropriate for young ears. Zara remained his constant companion, her hair now silver but her eyes still bright with intelligence and love. They had weathered every storm together, supported each other through every challenge, and their love had only deepened with time. On their 40th wedding anniversary, Their children organized a celebration even larger than the one 20 years before. The entire town of San Pedro turned out, along with ranchers from 3 counties, business associates, and friends from across California. Logan stood before the assembled crowd with Zara beside him, their 5 children and numerous grandchildren surrounding them, and marveled at the life they had built. 40 years ago, Logan began, his voice still strong despite his age. I married Zara Pemberton, and I did not deserve her. She was good and kind and brave, and I was a man running from a violent past with blood on my hands. But she saw something in me worth saving, and she had the courage to stand by me while I figured out how to be the man she deserved. He turned to Zara, taking her hands. You have been my partner in every sense of the word. You have challenged me to be better, supported me when I struggled, loved me when I was most unlovable. You gave me this family, this life, this peace. I have spent 40 years trying to be worthy of you, and I will spend however many years I have left doing the same. Zara squeezed his hands, tears running freely down her face. Logan Crawford, you won my respect before you won my heart, but once you had my heart, you guarded it more carefully than any treasure. You showed me that strength and gentleness can exist in the same person, that our pasts do not have to dictate our futures. You are the love of my life, and I would marry you again in a heartbeat. Their children and grandchildren surrounded them, 3 generations of Crawfords united in love and purpose. The photographer captured the moment, preserving it for future generations to see. As the party continued late into the night, Logan and Zara once again climbed their hill to watch the stars emerge. Logan moved slower now, his joints stiff with age, but Zara matched his pace without complaint, her own body showing the passage of years. I have been thinking about legacy, Logan said as they settled onto the bench he had built at the top of the hill years ago. What we leave behind when we are gone. And what have you concluded? Zara asked. That the only legacy that matters is the people we have loved and the lives we have touched. This ranch will endure or it will not. That is for our children to determine. But the love we have shared, the family we have built, the example we have set of choosing redemption over despair, that is eternal. I agree, Zara said, resting her head on his shoulder. Though I think you are selling the ranch short. Matthew and Rebecca and Thomas have learned your lessons well. They will preserve what you have built and make it even better. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead. Logan thought about the long journey that had brought him to this moment, from the violence of his youth to the peace of his old age. He thought about the men he had been and the man he had become, and he felt gratitude for the woman who had made that transformation possible. I love you, Zara Crawford, he said into the darkness. I have loved you for 40 years, and I will love you for whatever time remains to us. And I love you, Logan Crawford, Zara replied, my fierce cowboy with the quiet eyes and the merciful heart. You are my greatest adventure, my dearest friend, my one true love. They remained on the hill until late, reluctant to return to the party below. Finally, the growing chill drove them back to the house, where they found their family waiting with warmth and laughter. Logan and Zara lived many more years together, growing old side by side in the home they had built. They saw their grandchildren grow and begin families of their own. They watched the Crawford Ranch continue to thrive under Matthew's leadership, with Rebecca managing the business side and Thomas overseeing the horse breeding program that had become famous throughout the West. When Logan was 72, he fell ill with a fever that the doctor feared might be his final illness. Zara never left his bedside, caring for him with the same devotion she had shown throughout their marriage. Their children gathered, preparing for the worst, but Logan proved as tough as ever, pulling through after 2 weeks of struggle. As he recovered, he told Zara, "I am not ready to leave you yet. We still have more time together, more sunsets to watch, more memories to make." "Then we shall make them," Zara said, her relief evident in every word. "We shall make as many as we can." And they did. For 3 more precious years, Logan and Zara continued their life together, treasuring each day as the gift it was. They moved slower, tired more easily, but their love remained as strong as ever. On a warm September evening, as the sun set over the ranch they had built together, Logan and Zara sat on their porch surrounded by their family. All 5 of their children were there, along with their spouses and children. The yard was full of laughter and life. 3 generations of Crawfords united in love. Logan looked at Zara, seeing in her aged face the beautiful young woman who had trembled beside him at the altar so many years ago. She met his gaze and smiled, that same smile that had captured his heart when he first saw her singing in church. "It has been a good life," Logan said quietly, "just for her." "The best life," Zara agreed, "filled with love and family and purpose. We did well, you and I." "We did indeed," Logan said, pulling her close and kissing her forehead. "We did indeed." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, the Crawford family sat together, a testament to the transformative power of love, mercy, and second chances. Logan had come to their marriage as the cowboy everyone feared, but Zara had found mercy behind his quiet eyes. And together, they had built something beautiful that would endure for generations to come. The story of Logan and Zara Crawford became legend in San Pedro, passed down through their descendants and the families whose lives they had touched. It was a story of redemption and transformation, of choosing love over fear and mercy over violence. It was proof that people can change, that our pasts do not have to define our futures, and that sometimes the most unlikely marriages become the greatest love stories. And every time someone told their story, they always began the same way. She trembled marrying the cowboy everyone feared, but she found mercy behind his quiet eyes, and together they built a legacy of love that would never die.